Okay, I want to tell you one of the secret ways now of vastly increasing your vocabulary very quickly, very easily. And I know you're going to say, Greek? I'm not really interested in Greek, thank you very much. That's not going to help me one little bit. Wait a bit. The English language didn't just arrive out of nothing. It was put together over, well, maybe thousands of years. And its origins go back to the Greek language and to the Roman language Latin. And if you know a little bit or just a few words from the ancient Greek and Latin, it immeasurably helps you to understand the English words that you're using day to day. I just want to give me 5 minutes. I will take you through a few of these, and if you do not immediately understand the significance and the importance of learning some of the background to the words that you're using every day, then I'll guarantee that you will. You'll be quite surprised at some of them, I'm sure. And the insight it will give you into words you've used commonly will be massive. So let me take you just a few, give you some examples of some very simple English words. I'm going to split them up into their Greek components, and then you can see how they're put together, where they came from, and why it is that they mean the things that they do mean, and how therefore you can use those same components in a whole variety of other words too, to understand where they come from and get a better understanding of the meaning of words. Let's take the first one, biology. Biology, commonly used word, one of the sciences, and one of those which is made up of two Greek words. Bios, meaning life, particularly green life, plant life, and logia, which is the study of something. It comes from the word word, in actual fact. So words, putting together words to make a study of something. Bio, logia, life, the study of life. Then you also have Zoe, which is the another word for life, but more animate life, moving life, hence zoology, as opposed to biology, where zoology is more about living animals that move around. And there are many other ologies, geology, for example, where geo is the word for earth, and petrology, which is the study of rocks, where petros is the Greek word for rock. If your name is Peter, then it's basically the word for rock. You're the rock. So, biology and many other ologies in the study of those come from logia. Catastrophe. Didn't know that was a Greek word necessarily. Two Greek words put together. Kata, meaning downward, and strophe, meaning turning. So, put together, turning downwards, or literally falling off a cliff, basically. You suddenly move along, falling up, you hit a catastrophe. That's what catastrophe means. And knowing a bit of Greek helps you understand the English. Democracy, here's a word you'll have come across many times. Democracy, the kratos, the second half, meaning rule, or the ruling, or the controlling, or where the sovereignty of the control comes from. And demos, in this case, the people. But krasi is used in many other instances too. You've heard of bureaucracy, which is literally the rule of the bureau, the rule of the desk, the rule of the administrator. That's where that comes from. You may have heard of plutocracy, which is the rule of the rich, the plutos. You may have heard of aristocracy, the rule of the good, the aristos, the noble. That's where that comes from, the aristocracy. All of the rules of different kinds. There's many different kinds of rules. And you can get them all together from that original Greek. Dyslexia. You might suffer from dyslexia, or know someone who does suffer from dyslexia. Two Greek words again. Dys, meaning impaired, broken, not functioning properly. Lexis, meaning word. So you have the words not functioning properly. There's also the mathematical one, calcula, dyscalculia, which is the same thing, impaired use of calculations, and there are other ones too. Anything which begins with dis is doubtful, dodgy. Economy, two more Greek words, oikos, meaning house,
And nemein, which means to manage, managing your house, is the economy. The house in this case could be the country. So it's a big house. Other word, geography. We've mentioned geos before, meaning the earth. And the name George is someone who is of the earth or interested in the earth. Grapho, meaning to write, I write. And therefore, if you're interested in geography, you're interested in drawing or writing out graphical elements of the earth. So often charts, maps, diagrams of the earth. That's what geography is about, as opposed to geology, which is a study of the earth, which is usually the composition of the earth more precisely. Helicopter is a word you know, made from helikos, which is spiral. Leonardo da Vinci devised, on paper at any rate, the first helicopter from a spiral kind of wing, and the pteron, which is literally a wing. Some winged reptiles, pterodon, pterodactyl, are named after that kind of Greek word. Helikos, pterodon, helicopter, spiral, wing. Hippopotamus, you may know this one. A hippo or hippo is a horse, the Greek word for horse, and potamus, the word for river. So put them together, a river horse, and that's what the hippopotamus was originally thought to be, because it was submerged often in the river, and you wouldn't see any more than just its nose or its head above the surface of it. Homeopathy, coming again from two Greek words, homeo, meaning the same, and pathos, meaning suffering. Pathos appears in many different words. You can have anything with pathy on the end. You have empathy, which means you're suffering with somebody, or the sympathy, you're suffering alongside somebody. There's apathy or apathy, which is the a bit is a negative, so it means you don't have any feelings, don't have any suffering, no feelings whatsoever for someone if you are apathetic. And there are the many other words which use pathos. Pathos is in its own sad, suffering kind of word too. Another Greek word you need to know. Horoscope. Hora, meaning time, or hora, because normally there's an H and silent H in front of the O. Hora, which is time, and scupine, which is to observe. Hence you're observing the flow of time as you're looking at the stars, and you're charting it out on a chart, producing the horoscope. Monogamy. Probably come across the idea of monos. Monoplane is a one-wing plane as opposed to a biplane, which is two wings. Monolito is the name often given to the only son in a Spanish family. Gamos means union, so you put monos and gamos together, a single union connection. Monogamy, single union, which means there's not, as opposed to polygamy, which is many unions where you're married to many people at the same time. Monogamy, married to one person, single union. Pantomime, anything which begins with pan tends to be all, pantos meaning all, and mime, of course, mimos, to mimic something, to act something out. So you've got a stage full of people and they're all acting. That's a pantomime. That's where it comes from, all mimicking, all acting. Rhinoceros, another well-known name for the animal. Rhino, meaning nose, and ceros, meaning horn. If you know anyone has to go for an operation because they want to change the shape of their nose, that type of operation is called a rhinoplasty, which means to change the shape of the nose. In this case, if the horn is the nose, or the nose is the horn, then you have a rhinoceros. Self-explanatory, really, isn't it? Telephone, that's a mixture, not of two Greek words, but one Greek word and one Latin word. Tele, meaning in the Greek word for distant, in the distance, you see, over a period of space, and phone, which means to sound or a voice, and therefore telephone is a voice over a long distance. You also have the same with television, of course, but this is, of course, instead of phonetic, it's visual, so you actually see a picture from over a long distance. Teleological is a word often used for seeing into the future, the end of something, a long distance away. There's an interesting one, sarcophagus, those things which you take an Egyptian mummy and you put them into a sarcophagus and put the lid on, and the mummy is stored in there. It comes from two Greek words, sarx, meaning flesh, and phagus, which means to eat, flesh eating. So the body which decomposes in the sarcophagus, as we call it, is actually it's rather well preserved, but is a flesh-eating device. It takes in the body, and it's like it consumes it in a way. So that's where that comes from. The word sarx is used in many other places. For example, you've come across it in the word sarcasm, and sarcasm a kind of humour, but it's a rather painful and difficult and cutting humour. In fact, what it literally means, sarcasm is flesh tearing, humour which cuts into people. So be careful about the use of sarcasm, according to the Greek. Final slide, just a quick review of some of these words. Pan, remember, meaning all, as in panacea, which means a cure-all. Panorama, which means a visual display of all. Vertere, which means to turn. So if you suffer from vertigo, you feel like you're turning around all the time. Or subvert, which means to turn down, a bit like catastrophe, but it's different, not so sudden. Or advert, which means to turn towards. We're all used to adverts and turning towards them. Lucis, light, as in lucid, awake and light. Elucidate, to throw light upon something. There's the two words intra and inter. Come across them in intranet and internet. What's the difference? Intra meaning within, so it's a kind of network within a company, and inter meaning between, so it's like a network between companies or between cities, those kind of things. The other two words, pre and post. Pre meaning before and post meaning after. So you've got predict. Dict means to say. So predict is to say beforehand what's going to happen. After, postpone, to place after something else. Post-mortem, mortem meaning death. So after death you have a post-mortem. You discuss what happened to the body. And finally I've got vore. Pronounced vor these days, which means simply to eat. Another word for eat. So herbivore, someone who eats herbs or eats green plants. And carnivore. Carne is another word for flesh and or meat, basically, as in chili con carne. That's chili with meat. And carnivore is someone who eats meat, or a carnivore animal eats meat. And omnivore. Omni is another word for all. So you have someone who eats all things, like human beings are omnivores. Some animals are only carnivores and some animals are only herbivores. So a vast opening up of English words, which maybe you hadn't come across before, simply by learning and to understanding a few Greek terms. And once you know one Greek term, it can multiply across a whole range of words, and you can see them cropping up in many different places. And you think, ah, yes, I understand that word, even though I've never seen it before. Why? Because I now understand the components of it. Now, if you're interested in this, you don't have to go and look up Greek. You don't have to go and look up Latin. You just have to go to an etymological dictionary. You can even type in etymology of a word into Google and it will give it to you. Etymology means basically the origins of the words. And it will take a word and it will break it down, just as I've done. Having broken it down, it'll tell you what those components mean, and it'll give you a much better and a clearer insight into the meaning of words, and vastly and easily expand your vocabulary so you become an expert in a whole range of things. Greatly recommended. Increase your own word vocabulary rapidly. Give time to do it. Get a book, write things down. Remember them, commit to memory while you still can, so that by the time you get to middle age, you've got a whole wealth of terms at your command and disposal, making you
a really articulate and powerfully communicative professional.